Opening day is just a few days away, and that means baseball time in Starkville, Mississippi once again. Helping us break down the Diamond Dogs entering the 2025 season, a highly anticipated season of baseball at the Dude. Robbie Faulk, one of the best in the business when it comes to talking all things Mississippi State, 4-on-3 sports. He also covers Mississippi State for Starkville Daily and is the co-host of the Thunder and Lightning podcast. Robbie, appreciate you taking the time once again, my friend. Really excited to talk about this Mississippi State Bulldogs ball club with you.
Yes, sir. Same here. I told you before the show, we're in crossover season. We got basketball, baseball. It doesn't get any better than this. So if you're not ready for it, then I don't know what else we got to do.
It's like drinking water out of a fire hose, my friend. But whether
That's
you're ready
right.
or not, it's coming and it's happening. But, you know, Robbie, as we talk about this Mississippi State team, I want to start with this. I find Chris Lemonis fascinating and just kind of his standing within the fan base. I know you see it all the time. Of course, your boards, I'm sure it's there. There's a lot of mixed feelings about him and just, you know, this is a guy that won a national championship. Last year, early in the season, you had folks maybe calling, maybe it was time for a change after a couple rough midweek losses. You know, State obviously goes on to win 40 games. You go to the regional round. You know, you went 17-13 in SEC play, which anybody who knows anything about SEC baseball, that's nothing to turn your nose up at. But regional play, you go to Virginia, really tough place to win. I thought the Dogs battled, and obviously you fall short. But where do we stand right now with Chris Lemonis when it comes to leading this program, and just how big of a season is this for, you know, continuing, I guess? It's weird to say reassure he's the right guy because, again, they won a national championship in 2021. But you know as well as I do, man, the expectations and the pressure to win at a place like Mississippi State, it's through the roof. So where do we sit right now with Chris Lemonis in your mind?
Yeah, I think things have settled a little bit. He afforded himself a little bit of grace with what he did last year. I mean, obviously, the season after the national championship was thought at the time to be kind of fluky. You know, because Chris Lemonis, when he got here, 2019, I think he lost maybe 2 non-conference games in the regular season. They were really good in conference schedule. Of course, they go to Omaha that year. 2020, they started to really turn it up there late in the non-conference schedule, and a lot of people felt like that team had a chance to be national championship contenders before the season ended. And then 2021, they win the national title. So in his first 3 seasons, Chris Lemonis was looking like, you know, if he stays long enough, could be one of the all-time greats at Mississippi State when it comes to Mississippi State baseball and coaching there. You know, he had done some things that Ron Polk hadn't done. I mean, obviously, Ron Polk never won a national championship, and Chris Lemonis was kind of ahead of Ron Polk as far as, you know, the 100 wins and how many wins he had gotten in the first 3 seasons, whatever. So, you know, that losing season was kind of fluky in a lot of people's minds. But their thought process was, the fan base, don't let it happen again. And it happened again. They had back-to-back 9-win SEC seasons. And that just can't happen at Mississippi State. So a lot of people, after that season, was ready for a change. After 2 straight seasons like that. And what happened was Chris Lemonis said, hey, our biggest issue right now is pitching. And it, without a question, was. The pitching staff, those 2 seasons were among the worst 2-season stretches in Mississippi State history. And I think in 2023, you can argue was the worst season in Mississippi State history as far as, you know, pitching is concerned. So Chris Lemonis went out there, and I thought he got one of the best pitching coaches in the country in Justin Parker. And what we saw last year was nothing short of miraculous with what he was able to do, taking a team that had an earned run average over 7 and dropping it under 5. And it was one of the top pitching staffs in the SEC and in the country last year in ERA. You had probably one of the best 1-2 punches in America in Cal Steven and Drangelo Sangia. And then you had some guys in the bullpen that were white flags the year before. I mean, these guys, Tyler Davis and Tyson Harden, when they came out in the ball game, it was game over in a bad way for Mississippi State. Last year, when they came in the ball game, it was game over for the other team. I mean, those two guys, you don't get to where you were last year without Tyson Harden and Tyler Davis. And that kind of really gives you hope for Mississippi State moving forward that, you know, Justin Parker in 1 year was able to turn guys from being, 10 earned run average guys to draft picks. and, two of the better relief pitchers in the SEC. So, I think at this point, getting back to, you're in postseason play. They were very disappointed they didn't make a regional at Duty Noble, and they had, arguments to do so. And that was a disappointment. This year is you got to host. I think that's the standpoint of the fan base and of Chris Lemonis is they've got to host this season to really feel like they're back on track. I think that his seat has cooled off considerably. I don't think the pressure is off of him at all. I don't know if it's ever off at Mississippi State with this fan base when you have 200 people showing up in the midweek for a scrimmage and people clamoring on the message boards for updates from these practices. It just isn't like that at most places. So the pressure is never really off of Chris Lemonis, but I think it has cooled considerably.
Robbie, you mentioned what Justin Parker did with that pitching staff a season ago, and that'll be a big question coming in. A lot of talent, but anytime you lose a pair of guys like Durangelo St. John, Cal Stevens in your rotation, it's like, okay, who's next up? Pico Cone looks to be that guy in the number one starter role, the Friday night role, if you will, the southpaw. You've also got Carson Lagone and Jacob Pruitt, who should fill out the weekend rotation. Stone Simmons potentially in that number 4 spot, maybe that midweek role. Obviously didn't pitch a season ago due to injury. And then Chase Hungot, I might be saying that last name wrong, but he should be at the back end of the bullpen, being your closer. The bottom line is this, Robbie, again, you mentioned what Justin Parker's done. So there's a level of trust there that they're going to find more guys to fill in where St. John and Stevens, where they depart, and where some other bullpen pieces depart as well. But there are question marks, but there's a lot of talent maybe to answer those questions. Your thoughts on what this pitching staff will look like this season?
Yeah, I think it kind of remains to be seen right now. This weekend, the approach that Chris Lemonis is taking with the starting rotation is experience, veteran leadership. I don't think that this weekend necessarily tells you what to expect for the rest of the year in the starting rotation. I feel like Pico Khan's going to be in the rotation all season long. It would be a bad surprise if he isn't, because he's supposed to be your ace this year. He's supposed to be taking a considerable jump. A guy that he had Tommy John, he missed his sophomore season and then missed most of last season, ended up pitching in 9 ball games late in the year. And I thought as he got the rust knocked off, he got better and better. And then you saw him against Virginia in the last game of the season. He started that ball game. And I remember coming in the game, we didn't really know what to expect. State season's on the line. They were down to kind of the bare bones of starting pitching because you had already pitched Cal Stevens, Durangelo. You had pitched Brooks Auger, I think, as well in that regional. So you're kind of scraping the barrel trying to get somebody out there. And he struggled a little bit early on in that game, and then he ended up really settling in. I thought pitched the best he's ever pitched. I think he threw 7 innings in that game, went stride for stride with Virginia. And then when he came out, the wheels kind of fell off for Mississippi State. But that's kind of what this staff hopes to see from Pico. He's going to be a mid-90s fastball, sitting probably 94, 95 consistently. From the left side, that's really good. Has some good put-away pitches with his secondary pitches. And a guy that's not really going to walk a lot of batters too. So I think the stuff is there for him to be a Friday night starter. He was a guy that was getting interest in the early rounds of the MLB draft, maybe top 4 rounds this year. Decided to turn down the draft, come back to Mississippi State, and increase his draft stock. And as we saw with Cal Stevens and Durangelo St. John, not a bad idea. Both those guys made a lot of money by coming to Mississippi State and working with Justin Parker. So we'll see what happens there. That's the one guy that I feel like is pretty safe in that rotation. Carson Ligon is a player that he's seen his velocity jump, 3-4 miles an hour and is touching high 90s, 97, 98, 99. And the thing with him is harnessing it, making sure that he's throwing strikes, consistently finding his spots on the plate, not leaving it over the plate for mistake pitches. And we've seen that a little bit in the scrimmages. We've seen walks. We've seen guys get barrels on his fastball. He's going to have to throw strikes and have to be consistent, or Justin Parker won't pitch him. So that's the big thing for him. The stuff is electric. The stuff is there for him to take a huge jump. but that's going to be, something to watch. And then Sunday, they're going to go with Stone Simmons this week, which is a bit of a surprise for me. I didn't know if they would start him in first weekend because there is there's a case you can make for Jacob Pruitt, who came in from Indiana State, a guy that I think is going to help Mississippi State in different ways. I don't know whether it's going to be starting or in the bullpen, but he can help you. And then Charlie Foster, a young freshman left-hander that they're really excited about. They're just not ready to throw him out there just yet. So Stone is the guy to go with. He has not pitched for Mississippi State in 2 years. It's been almost 3. He went out with the Tommy John surgery, came back from it, got it again. He's missed now 2.5 years. And, this is going to be a big test for him, but mentally strong kid. We'll see if the body can handle it. He said a couple weeks ago he's throwing the best he's ever thrown. So they're excited about him. He had a really good summer, good fall and spring. We'll see what he's got on Sunday. I'm excited to see him back out there. We have not seen him since March of 2022. So this is a big opportunity for him. And then, we'll figure out in the next few weeks what roles are taken up. There's a lot of bodies and a lot of talented players, but just not a lot of experience and not a lot of guys that we've seen in the roles that they can be pitching in.
So, Robbie, as we turn our attention to the lineup, the guy that immediately jumps off the page and one of my favorites, I don't think he's being talked about enough, is Hunter Hines, the senior, returning. That was a huge boost for this ball club. 16 home runs a season ago. I fully believe, and I'm sure you do as well, he can be a 20, maybe 25-plus home run kind of guy. He's got that kind of pop. State, like many teams in the SEC, go into the transfer portal to boost the lineup. Sawyer Reeves comes in from the Citadel, Ace Reese from Houston, and then Noah Sullivan from USC Upstate, who hit 17 bombs for Upstate a season ago. There's some unknowns in the lineup when you look at the rest of the guys, some inexperience. What are you expecting from this Bulldogs lineup 1 through 9? What should we expect from the offense in the 2025 season?
I think the biggest thing is more depth. Last year, they just didn't have a lot of it. When you got through the first 9 and you got guys struggling, there were very few guys you could turn to on the bench that you could bring in and replace that. Dakota Jordan and Hunter Hines late in the regular season and in the SEC tournament, they were in a black hole and just couldn't get out of it. And there was nobody that you could bring in and have them sit for a game or anything like that. I mean, State just didn't have any depth. This year, I feel confident there's 13, 14 guys that could get out there and hit on a day-to-day basis. I think they did a really good job addressing that in the transfer portal, building more depth. They have depth at just about every position where you could bring somebody in. You're not going to be stuck defensively and have to play someone defensively. And that was something that was a problem last year too. So you got outfield spots that you can fill. You have corner infield spots, middle infield. You have 3 or 4 catchers that you can put out there. So that's the biggest thing. That's probably the strength of this team is their offense. And we'll see how it comes together. But I think it's going to be a tougher lineup to get through than last year. I think there's going to be less strikeouts, more walks. You're going to force pitchers to throw more pitches. You don't have a David Mershon right now, but and you lost Connor Hyzak. That was a big loss. You lost Dakota Jordan. Ace Reese, I think, is a guy that could be a breakout candidate in the SEC. He was a star at Houston. He is every single scrimmage I've watched, every single box score I see from summer to now is Ace Reese hitting a home run, double, 3 for 4 day with 4 RBI. He is a guy that I think can be a huge breakout star for Mississippi State. The big question for him is not what he does offensively, is what he does defensively. He was DH Summit at Houston. He played mostly in the outfield. Mississippi State's moved him to third base. And it's been a bit of an adventure in the fall and the spring. That's an area that he's got to improve and probably will with more reps. But if he's not able to give you some consistency there, then I think he's got to take up a spot in the outfield or he's got to be a DH, and that's moving other things around. So that's the question. I don't anticipate Ace Reese having many days where he's sitting on the bench. Very few, to be exact. And it would have to probably be an injury because he is that kind of bat. He's going to be one of the best bats in the SEC, in my opinion. But the defensive piece is the big thing for him. And, Hunter Hines is the same way, but the opposite side of that, he's become a really, really good first baseman. And we know he's going to hit 16 plus home runs. He's done it every year he's been here. But can he do more than that offensively? That last year was a disappointing year for him. He had a bad taste in his mouth. He didn't get drafted. He's hungry, but he's got to be a more all-around hitter for Mississippi State. You can't have that in your lineup where you feel like if he goes through a stretch of bad games, it's just going to snowball. And he can't be home run or bust. He's got to be a more all-around hitter. He's got to be going to all fields, left field especially. He's got to be thinking more than the long ball, and that's what Chris Lemonis is looking for this year from him.
Robbie, on the note, you were mentioning Ace Reese and thinking he can have a breakout season. On that note, again, you know this roster and this program as well as anybody. Give us one pitcher and one hitter that you feel like right now is an unknown outside of Starkville that you think will be a household name by season's end.
Yeah, from the pitching side of things, it would not shock me to see a breakout season from Charlie Foster. He's a true freshman, was committed to Georgia, backed off of that commitment late spring, early summer, if I remember correctly. Mississippi State lands him, and immediately in the fall, he was one of State's best pitchers. He's been a starting candidate. I don't know where he eventually settles this year. And it's very difficult to come into this league and have a lot of success as a true freshman at any position, but especially on the mound. Drangela Sangea was a starter for Mississippi State in year one, and his earned run average, I think, was around 8. He did not have a good first year. Chris Stratton was, at Mississippi State, a dozen years ago, was the SEC pitcher of the year, and he got blown up his freshman year. Ethan Small was the same way. He became the SEC pitcher of the year, struggled his freshman year. So it's a very tough transition, but it would not shock me at all if Charlie Foster is a guy that we're talking about, middle of the SEC schedule as a big piece for Mississippi State as a true freshman. He's got all the intangibles from the left side to be a special pitcher for Mississippi State. I think it was a major steal for them to get him late in the process. And I think Justin Parker will do some good things with him. From a hitting perspective, there's a lot of candidates there because we're talking about how good this offense can be, and there's a lot of new faces in it. But obviously Ace Reese is the guy that I think everybody's going to be looking at to make a huge impact. I think a guy like Noah Sullivan can have a really good season for Mississippi State. He's a kind of a utility guy. He's probably going to be a DH for MSU. I don't know what positions he would play. There's just not a lot of spots for him to slip in, but he will be in the lineup regularly. And it could even help you on the mound a little bit. He's a guy, he lost one game in his career at USC Upstate as a pitcher. And he pitched a lot there at USC Upstate. I don't anticipate him just pitching a ton for MSU, but he could come in and give you a couple innings, eat up a couple innings for you. And then hitting-wise, hit 17 home runs last year. A guy that's very difficult to strike out. You're very rarely going to see him strike out on 3 pitches. He's going to battle at the plate. He's got power. He's going to give you a really solid at-bat just about every time up. So I think that's a player to watch for sure around the middle of the lineup for MSU.
Robbie, I'm one. I seem to be drinking the Kool-Aid going in this season for the Dogs. I think this is a team capable of making a run to Omaha. Obviously, the expectation, like you mentioned, Lemonis has embraced it. This program's embracing it, is getting back to getting postseason baseball at the Dude. I think college baseball, for my humble opinion, is better when we have postseason baseball at the Dude. In your mind, if Mississippi State's going to make that happen, if they're going to meet expectations, maybe even exceed those and get back to Omaha, what has to click for this club this season?
I think Chris Lemonis said it right. They've got to take care of business in these midweek games. We've seen SEC schools that are really good that take these midweek games lightly. I think of like Florida over the years losing some midweek games, and LSU. And Mississippi State falls in that category the last couple of years, especially last year. They lost Central Arkansas, I think, one midweek, lost a couple other midweek games. And those are the games that separate teams a lot of times from hosting or national seed or not hosting. And for Mississippi State last year, I think that's what hurt them. At the end of the day, it was a team that won 17 games in SEC play. You're right around the magic number there. And then you went into the SEC tournament. You beat Ole Miss. You beat Texas A&M. You had a nice little run. So you won almost 20. You did win 20 games against SEC teams, counting the midweek against Ole Miss. So that everything said Mississippi State should host last year, except they didn't take care of business against some of these non-conference teams. And Chris Lemonis has preached that message now in the fall and in the spring now about how important those games are to Mississippi State, because their ultimate goal is to host and to be a national seed. Because when you host at Duty Noble, more often than not, you win. And, had they been able to slip through that regional against Virginia last year, they're probably hosting the Super Regional. That team could have possibly been in Omaha. So you eliminate the fact that you go on the road and play one of the best offenses in the country in Virginia if you take care of business in those midweek games, and a lot of them at home. So that's been the message. I think that's going to be the difference for this team this year, is if they can be productive in non-conference play, which is something they did most of Chris Lemonis's first 3 years. They got to get back to that. And then in SEC play, 16, 17 games, you win that many games in SEC play after you've taken care of business in non-conference, you're hosting. You get up to 18, 19, you're pushing for a national seed. So that's the real thing for this team this year. They got to do is they got to take care of business. And to do that, you got to be productive on the mound, and you got to be a tough at bat at the plate, and not go through these long stretches of really struggling with your best hitters like they have. So, they got to just be solid across the board.
Robbie, last thing before I get you out of here on a side note. I'm not exactly sure the weekend I will be taking in my first ever weekend, though, this season at the Dude. Any suggestions, must-dos when we come to Starkville?
Yes. It should be a fun time. First of all, you should come Super Bulldog weekend. That's the time you need to be there. There's going to be the Starkville Derby, which is now in its third year. It was started by my friend Alden Thornhill, and it's in the Cotton District. I don't know if you've been in the Cotton District, but it's kind of where the bar scene is in Starkville. We got a brand new large bar being built in Starkville, 2 levels, rooftop bar called The Landing, along with Two Brothers. You got Ben 612, a lot of great scenes right there. That is going to be the site of the Starkville Derby, which is home to the world's largest weenie dog race. And last year, I think there was like 50,000 people in that area for this. So you got to be there for that Super Bowl weekend. That's going to be the biggest crowd, probably 15,000 plus at Duty Noble. It's going to be great scenes. But yeah, it's really a sight to behold on an SEC weekend when you come to Starkville, and it's great weather, and you got the smoke bellowing from the outfield. You can walk around the outfield and stop at a rig, and somebody's probably going to give you a piece of sausage or a hamburger or a chicken wing or something. It's a really, really unique atmosphere that's unlike any place on the planet. And I promise you, once you leave there, you will be well fed and you'll be happy. I can promise you that. But I've got a list of recommendations for you whenever you're ready. Just let me know.
Yeah, we'll definitely be there, Robbie, this season. We'll link up. I'm going to hold you to that because, again, that's a bit of a bucket list item for me. And, again, that's top priority for us this SEC baseball season. So we'll be in touch. Robbie Faulk, again, one of the best in the business, man. I appreciate you taking the time, as always, once again, covering the Mississippi State beat for Maroon and White Daily, which is the On3 affiliate, also co-host of the Thunder and Lightning podcast, and covering Mississippi State for the Starkville Daily News. Robbie, appreciate you taking the time. Let folks know, in case they've been living under a rock, just exactly where they can find you on socials and check out your work.
Yeah, my Twitter account's Robbie Faulk. That's Robbie, correct way to spell it. Robbie Faulk on 3. You can check me out there. Thunder and Lightning, like you said, is it's anywhere you can get your podcast. You can find that. And then Maroon and White Daily at On 3. I'm really proud of the work that we've done at that network over the last couple of years. Shannon Terry is the best in the business. He's built 3 networks, and I'm proud to work for him and to call him my boss. And we are loving it over there at Maroon and White Daily. So if you're a Mississippi State fan or you're not, you can come check us out. We have a great thing going over there.
Robbie, appreciate you taking the time, man. Looking forward to doing it again soon, and we'll see you in Starkville very, very soon, my friend.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you.